Hi, this is Rachel Roumeliotis from Punch Tape, and we are here with another episode of the AI Marketing Stack podcast. This week, no interview, but we're going to do a special report on content marketing, a profession in flux. So, anyways, it's not all doom and gloom, although this first slide is kind of an eye catcher. This is all backed by different sources on the web, which you can see on the slides, but I'll also make sure that they're in the description so you can go read more. And actually, this particular one from SEMrush, we're going to have the author of this blog post probably on our next episode to dive even deeper into what's going on. So, 3% drop in new job postings for content marketing manager. That's not great, right? And they also say that the content marketing specialist roles are down. It's not great. And I have found, as someone who is looking for contract work in the content space, it's a difficult market. I'm sure that many of you have looked on LinkedIn for jobs. And when you do, you see that there are, I just remember this number from one that I looked at was 684 applicants. And a lot of the applicants are very senior, surprisingly senior for the job that is available. So it's a very tough job market. I think that's for a number of reasons in the world and in basically with white collar workers seeing AI come in, and I don't want to say take their jobs. I think they are evolving their jobs. And that's a little bit about what we're going to talk about here. So here we are. Oh, so here it says exactly what I'm talking about, right? So it's a tough time. It's not a dip per se, but it is a time that people, and by people, I mean, team managers are looking at how they want to structure their teams in marketing and content marketing, especially. And so I would call it maybe more of a pause for restructuring, right? So before we kind of knew the game at this point, right? Content was scarce, expertise was hard to scale. If you could put together really amazing, pieces of content and then string those together, amazing. You were invaluable, right? AI came along, and I actually only first used AI to help me with drafts in September of last year. And it scared me, and I felt a little bit guilty, which I think I've said on the podcast before. AI could do it in like 2 seconds, right? Now, it wasn't perfect by any means. It didn't have my judgment, and we talk about that here too. But it was a game changer from like the first task I had to do, right? Along with that, SEO changed to AIEO, and that's still something that we're changing. And I noticed that my searching changed immediately as well. I'm either looking for answers on, Claude, or I'm simply the AI summary is enough for me, right? So just by looking at myself as sort of like Jane normal searcher, I can see things have changed. And so it's not, I do feel that, at least today, we'll see in 6 months, that I am not replaced, but how I'm managing, and it's more about managing and directing content, is really significantly changing very, very fast. And so let's see the next slide here. So these are a couple of interesting data that I found. Like I'm saying, so Google searches, I'm not going to say they, we can see that we can get our answer right away. We're not even going off of Google, right? So 60% of that, right? We're no longer driving to our websites, right? And so that's something too, I don't think that is super new news, but we're laying sort of all of the different pieces that present why things have evolved and why you need to look at and create content in a different way. And in another way to look through, click-through rates dropped when AI overviews appeared, right? It's just changing the way people are doing things. I think if someone needs something a lot deeper, they'll go, but there's not a lot of those people, right? When you're looking for a large amount of people, building an audience, trying to let people know and be aware, you have to do things differently now. So it seems like from this survey that's out there from SEMrush, that roles are changing and not changing, right? So like your content marketing manager, your content marketing specialist, those are heading away. And if you're called that now, great. You might be more of a content creator or a content producer, as you can see on the right. Head of content marketing, VP of content, even chief marketing officers are up because of that restructuring and pause to think through how is AI going to be incorporated into marketing. It's made it into the zeitgeist that AI driven tooling is part of the workflow of marketing, and the people or how your organization is structured is significantly different. It doesn't mean that those people that are there can't do it, but it's something to be aware of as you position yourself moving forward, either in your current role or if you're out there looking. So writing, this struck me too as interest. So writing as a job requirement, not so much anymore. Now, that isn't to say that when we work with, AI tooling that we're not in there editing and shifting and changing, but sitting down to write something from scratch, as much as I love that, it's just not what people are doing. It's not fast enough, right? And so that is something that at the very least is being augmented by AI tools. So that's just something that I know it took me a couple of months to understand that that was okay and that my value shifted to ideation and editing and sculpting and creating derivatives and creating flows. So along with that, we're seeing the English degree requirement go down, which honestly, was that ever a really good idea for us? I'm counting myself. Literature, English, and American, whatever. Anyways, it was a good time. Um, Journalism degree, although we need journalists out there, my goodness, has gone down for these as well. And so you're seeing more of sort of management, organizational, strategic things there. And this is something to think about when you're putting together your resume. So like I say, the demand, I think there is a little bit of a pause. I will say that. And I think that that is rippling depending on what industry you're in. But I think there is a little bit of pause as the demand shifts, as people figure that out team by team by team. I also think that, unfortunately, in some cases, whether it be that team itself, but more than likely, people who aren't necessarily directly involved with the marketing team are making choices to downsize when they don't know how that is actually going to affect things. And I think that's a mistake. And I think because of that, we'll see an uptick in jobs soon. Fingers crossed, everyone, right? Okay. So it's just true. I've mentioned this in other places, and I'll put this. There's lots of articles out there. There's one in HBR that I really like that basically just says, AI, in fact, does help with productivity by a lot. It's just a fact, right? And so it even actually is making us work more because it's allowing us with a little bit less expertise to initiate things that were harder to initiate, right? People are using it. They're seeing that it works, right? And that it's just becoming a reality. I don't think there's anyone now, and if you are, just jump right on because I think you can get on there initially and start learning if you just start poking around, but people are using AI. You kind of have to. The game has changed, and apparently the median salary is going up, which is great for all of us, right? So that's a good thing. So it's out there, it's in a pause, it's changing. And so we talked about here, we have the AI Marketing Stack podcast, of course, which has many different components. So as far as sort of like the new content stack, what are we looking at? So instead of doing certain things like writing, AI is going to do that first writing for us, but we're going to direct it and strategize and figure out where it fits, right? AI is now working on sort of like, well, they've changed SEO, right? But like figuring out, they can comb the data much faster than we can and figure out what are the right keywords, how to optimize, all of that stuff. We don't need to think about that, right? That can be automated, right? And it's more about infusing the content with expertise, a certain voice, which AI can mimic and put together, but keeping a point of view. I see a lot of people out there, and this is true. If you're just taking what comes out of Claude or ChatGPT, it's sort of like a minimal level, right? It's fine usually, right? But it's not great. So there's still the making it great that you need to go in there and do. Definitely content repurposing. Everything's so fragmented. Some people are on LinkedIn. No, they're not. They're on, they're looking at YouTube. Sometimes they'll read, 100 words, but more likely they're looking at YouTube shorts. So how do you take an idea and repurpose it, right? And it's about getting out there. Like for instance, this actual presentation. So I'm doing this as a podcast. I'll most likely put together, a newsletter on LinkedIn. I'll break out some YouTube shorts. Like I'm going to reuse it as much as I can because I think it's something that is hopefully helpful to the people that are in the content marketing space. And it kind of pulls together everything that I've been looking at. But I'm going to do that with the help of what I'm using right now, which is Riverside. And I'm also going to make sure that it's something that can live on. That's what I actually really like about the repurposing is that, well, one, that it reaches different people because different people have like different ways of learning and have different ways of learning. But I like that 3 months from now, I could put something together and, point back to this. And you can keep doing it, I think, in a more structured, easier way so that you can be moving forward and this continues to live on. Kind of along the same lines, summarizations, translations, which is so cool, right? Being able to put that out there. And I know that, like, for instance, this video can be out there and people can be listening to it or see the captions, I should say, in different languages. Love that. I think that's great. Also, again, knowing what not to publish. It isn't necessarily about quantity, right? It's about what is the most effective. There's still the art in there. I feel it. I feel the art is still in there. Simple things like headline testing. Like, you know, we can all come up with 10 headlines. I feel like the AI, the prompt engineering just helps you do it faster, right? You say this, you like that one, you don't like that one, more like this, put it in the form of a question, whatnot, right? So I think helping with the headlines and then testing them out, fantastic, right? And then that leaves you to talk to people and go to events and socialize what you have done, on these pieces of content. And then sort of the orchestration of it, right? Again, we talked about sort of the fragmentation of all of the different social media channels and instead looking at how you build out the voice and the arc and, can something that shows up on LinkedIn be slightly different on X, right? And why would that be? And what is your strategy there? And taking a look at, how you're connecting with the different audiences. Okay. So one of the things that's happening right now is that, as we've said, AI kind of turns you into like a superhuman content operator, right? I think that in some cases, and I think this is why managers are pausing, is that you might not need, two content managers or what we'll call like a content creator. You might need one, but that other person might need to be a go-to-market engineer, which is something we've talked about on the podcast before. So I don't, and I hope I don't see this as a contraction, but a changing of roles, right? So we've talked about this on basically every slide is content production is faster, right? It's just a fact. So, if I need to do 5 pieces of content in a week, that would have seemed like crazy before. Now it's like I can do that. I can have drafts in a day and then work on it, right? In a couple of days. We're seeing that the AI tools are being used like every single day. I know I use them. I started out, I didn't have like memberships or pay for, like ChatGPT monthly, and now I do. And that happened really, really fast. What's also interesting is all of us are kind of out there winging it, right? None of us received any training, or maybe a couple of you did. If you did, fantastic. We also, by the way, I can help train a little bit in the content marketing space, certainly. So if you're interested in that for you or your teams, get in touch. But there's lots of things out there, right? And you can see that all across social media. You see lots of, a webinar, an event. I actually did an event and then I put out, if you want to take a look at it, content strategy for startups. So there's lots going on, I think, to support you in your role and how you can evolve. Okay. So these are sort of some archetypes that are winning right now, right? So what I've noticed is that when I think of myself as sort of like a content strategist, a content creator, I have a combination of knowledge, right? It isn't just that I know how to put together or I know good content when I see it. I now know how to do that with AI driven tooling. But I also know over years of experience what kind of content works and what doesn't work. And, what might work on video won't work on text. And what, we were talking about before, what a narrative arc might look like, what turns that audience off right away, how to educate people. And so expertise is still valuable. It is just now buoyed by AI tool. So we get to the second one, which is the early AI adopter, right? And I would say we're almost probably past that a little bit, right? Um, depending on your area. Actually, I'm going to take that back. I think it's probably a wide spectrum of people who like jumped on the bandwagon, and I bet there's a lot of teams out there that haven't really started. Like, sure, maybe they, get a draft or two out of Claude, but they're not really incorporating AI into their workflows, and they haven't looked at how they're changing their teams. And so be the person that does that. We've talked about that before. So don't throw your hands up and say, "Oh my God, AI is coming in, it's changing everything. It's all AI slop." Well, make it not AI slop. That's what I would say. So go in, be knowledgeable about it. And we talked about this in another one with Mitchell, I think, in an episode two ago, maybe, where know how to talk about these changes in marketing to your executive team so that, it's easier for them to understand why you might be changing things, why you might want training, why you might want to buy some software. And then community building, certainly not new, but this idea of creating community and owning your own audience, this sort of first party data has gotten more and more valuable, right? Because of the fragmentation, because people aren't going to the website. How do you organically build that community, right? And I think that's one on one. I think that's connecting with people via different assets. It's doing a podcast, it's building out a newsletter, and it's being able to have an ongoing conversation with people. So I think those are three aspects that you would want to make sure that you're working on the skills around those and that you're highlighting them, especially if you are out in the market looking for a job. This, I think, was something that, again, it took me a little bit to digest, right? Stop competing where AI wins. It can optimize workflows. It can pull together the best headlines. It's not like you can beat it at putting together 10 headlines right away. You can't write as fast as it's going to. So figure out, and that's a really, really big change that content isn't coming from you and things aren't the way they were. At least I found that really hard. And so figure out figure out what a content marketer is today, which is really the journey that I've been going through and hopefully sharing a little bit my journey there. And so I've realized that it's more about strategy, facilitation, changing things up, and it's fun to put out content a little bit quicker sometimes because you can see where it's going and how it's going, and it's been fun to learn. Now, the not so fun part is figuring out how you're going to make a salary, of course. So, yeah, I thought this was important to stop on and just put that out there, and listeners, think about that. Stop competing where AI wins and what that means for you. Okay. So again, looking sort of at your durability, right? So your perspective right now, it comes from you, comes from your brain. It's what you've experienced. It's unique. It is not, at least as of now, not inside like Claude's brain, right? So that's really important. Relationships, talking to people, having a network, making connections. I mean, just invaluable. And that, again, that's not new. I think it's actually just, I don't even know if it's grown. It continues to be really important. And I think what I would say is, there's always a certain number of people that are able to do this in person. If you're not able to do that in person, that's where I think finding your online is great, or a few different ones, figuring out, can you build your own? Can you build somewhere that you can be having discussions with people. I always really like GitHub discussions because I feel like that's where things are happening. I don't necessarily think it's a great idea to like make a whole sort of like discussion board thing elsewhere. I like if you can pull together like where people are doing the work and having discussions, I think that's great. And then, like we've talked about before, having good judgment. I think everything's been sped up, but if you're like me, which I'm guessing you are, you know when something's off, when something makes sense. There's still facts in the universe, and you've probably run across them in your experience. And I think these are three important things, like if you're in an interview, to talk about when the question will inevitably come up. How are you using AI tools? How would you incorporate them here? Hopefully, this is giving you some fodder for something like that. So this was interesting. And I've had a couple of different people talk about this, and I've noticed it myself. This was another one where I was like, no, it's not true. But be an expert in a little area. And I mean that in a couple of different ways. So, like, if you're in the marketing space, be an expertise in content, right? And everything that comes with that, right? And be able to share that knowledge with a specific audience, right? And I think within that, I've long been in the technology industry. And so there's lots of different niches in that, right? So I think it's almost like, for instance, if I were to be like, I know all about AI. It's kind of being like all about nothing, right? Like that's really easy to replicate. So maybe being specifically about security in AI, or even more specific, security for agentic AI, right? So thinking through that, or thinking in verticals, right? Like AI for healthcare. And what type of audience? Is it a technical audience? Are you looking to educate business folks? And I don't think you necessarily have to pick one. Like I myself, again, have picked a couple different audiences that I'm trying to build up over time and just seeing how it goes. And again, I used to say this too when we were putting together ideas for books at O'Reilly, is I called it the PB&J book, right? Like you don't necessarily need to do a book on a technology where all the documentation is out. Like, are you going to be better than that? Or are you going to be faster than that? Probably not. But if you can take technology A plus B plus C and pull that together and talk about how you can really solve that problem and optimize that problem. And then you've got something, right? Then you've got a solution to a problem. Then you're really teaching something that isn't, out there 52,000 times slightly differently. So that's real value add. So, like we've been talking about, don't compete, direct it, right? So, this is another way of sort of looking through what AI is doing, right? So, we're talking through like if AI replaced it, AI can write something and it can actually post it for you if you wanted it to. But before that, you want to, brief the AI. You want to give the AI, and I've found this before, I've mentioned this before, whisper flow. That seems to have made it even faster. Like we need that to give context to the AI, right? Give the context that you have and go in and cut and slash and do what you need to do. AI can do the first draft. It can get you there. And that actually what I've found is helps with my ideation, right? So then you do that, then you go in and you incorporate you into it basically, right? AI can churn out a lot of stuff, optimize for volume, but that isn't what we need, right? That AI slop. So you can go in and look at what it's done. Say you asked it to create 5 derivatives of something. I don't even know if one would be the one that you necessarily want, but I'm sure there's gems across them. And how do you think through that? How do you direct AI then to take those pieces and create something different? How do you, again, it's a tool, a very, very powerful tool, but it still needs direction. And then this is so true, right? Like AI has helped with topics that I don't know, right? It has helped me to understand the different corners of AI, frankly, which I think is really funny every time I do it, and ask it to give me some information on, how it's changing content. Or one of the first things I did with it was asking what the social media presence of, a company or two looked like. So that was really good. And then, like I said, it pumps out something, right, that isn't necessarily super context aware. And so you need to get your judgment cap on again and shape it. It powerful, but not you. That's my new tagline, which I'm sure AI will help me think of a better way to put that, but whatever. So, like we talked about, having an audience is really, really important. I actually came to podcasting, not only doing them, but listening to them pretty recently. And I think what's called like the third generation, I might be totally making that up. 67% of people of Americans have listened to podcasts. That's high. So that's something either to, advertise with one, we're available, or be on one, make your own one. It's surprisingly easy to get up and running, pretty cheap. And for me, it's fun. It's not for everyone, but anyways. So, and then I do, like we've said, text content is going down. I think it's still helpful to have out there. It helps route people to other things. Like for instance, like I said, I'll put together um, a newsletter post for LinkedIn on this that will alert people to the podcast being out, right? And so things are driving across different things, so I'll pull out pull quotes and stuff like that. And Reddit, which has also been around for a long time, is definitely something that hasn't diminished with the AI overview, search results, and all of the AIEO. In fact, it's something that's getting, for good or bad, because I don't know how factual and, is it giving the right answer, right? If it pulls something from Reddit, well, is something that is getting used quite a bit and is being brought up in terms of where AI is getting its information. Like I said, that's a little bit worrisome, I think, in some cases, but it's where you could be making sure that there's factual, correct information. It's something to be aware of and take a look at how your brand is being represented. And if that's something where you can build up a voice. But that is a whole world unto itself. And then this is something that occurred to me, I'm sure influenced by everybody else, right? So this deck has been built on, this isn't like, oh my God, I came up with all this. It's built upon everything that I've been reading, and I've put in these sources, which I will put in the description. But learn in public. All of a sudden, when I was kind of going through the last 6 months, it occurred to me that like other people might be doing this. And I would just share what I'm doing, right? And it makes sense. Like we have Punch Tape, which is a consultancy to get out there and let people know who we are. But it is also about education. I hope that it's helpful to people in some way. And so this is what I'm doing, right? And I think that you could do it too, right? So put out those blog posts, put out the YouTube shorts. If you have conducted a survey, get that out there. I think that's really valuable. That really, I know for me, draws me in when I see actual data. Share your AI experiences. I actually did this when I found something I actually got excited about. It was Opal from Google. It was a natural language processing sort of like app creator, which has been awesome. And then still going to those events or virtual events, which we do, of course. Speaking, getting out there, building out who you are, and you're not getting, because of AI probably, and because of the job market, it's really hard to be seen by people. If you are looking for a job. So another way to do that is to do all of these different things, right? And hopefully someone comes across your gloriousness in one of these ways. And I think what I have noticed for myself is not no one thing change the world. It's definitely ongoing, but I have to say I've enjoyed it and I've also learned a lot. And it's for someone who can, sometimes not be the quickest to get up and do something. This has really pushed me along, and I think it's been really great. So again, the title shifts we're seeing, right? You're not seeing writer anymore. You're going to content strategist, content manager, a little pedestrian now, right? It's sort of like this whole ecosystem builder, right? Events, social media, content operations, right? Social media manager. Nope. Community. It's about community. Get that front and center, right? SEO content producer. Nope. Content and search strategist. And that's just really the way things have been changing. So what we like to do here at the AI Marketing Stack podcast is I like to be pragmatic and practical. And so I don't want this just to be something where we're like, things are changing, think about it. So what are you going to do? I will give you permission to start this next Monday because this will be publishing probably on a Monday. So go into your LinkedIn. And actually, I think I got to do this too. What does your headline say? Are you using sort of up-to-date wording? Are you highlighting what used to make sense or what makes sense now? Right? I think that's really key. I think that can make a big difference. And obviously, like when we say LinkedIn, also your resume, right? Pick one AI tool and actually use it. Yes. I know I learn by using. So I just think this is great, right? So go in, start to play with it. I think you'll actually find it fun. You don't even necessarily have to do content marketing with it. I mean, that would be great, obviously, right? But you can start with like, you like video games. So you're going to, create something about that. I think that's good. Look at your network and your experience, or if you don't necessarily have a lot of that, what do you want to do, right? Look at, what are you passionate about? Is there a need for that in the market? How can you help? Right. And here we're saying be really, really specific. I think that's not only helpful in terms of like business and getting yourself hired. I think it brings clarity of thought. Publish something. It's fun. It's different now, right? Because you can do it with AI. I think that takes the initial, oh my God, how am I going to start, right? And use it as much or as little as you're comfortable with. But get yourself out there. Whether it's, I've seen these before and I have read them, LinkedIn, just like a post, or you set up a blog for yourself, go on Substack, right? Do it. I think you'll find as you start to build your footprint, if you haven't yet, I think again, it'll be fun. I think you'll be proud and it's good for you. And then also reach out to someone, right? You don't necessarily have to be like, hey, there's this job at your work that can you put me up for it? You can just say, hey, I like what you're doing. Actually, that's what I found too with the podcast and writing and stuff like this is that it's a softer way to just make new connections, right? Like, I want to hear what you're doing, right? Or I'm doing this podcast, which is something that I hope is good for me, but I hope is also good for you who is on here, and you can point to a place where your knowledge is getting out there in the world, right? And I think this is interesting too. Content is not less valuable in terms of needing it to learn, right? It just changed how content is made, right? The expertise is your instinct, your judgment, your position in the community. So again, it's just things have changed, right? So listen to your gut, use the tools that are available to you, and go out and talk to people. I think it's what this basically comes down to, right? So like I said, I'm Rachel from Punch Tape. It's something I created to hopefully work with people out in the world, either training on content marketing, helping with content marketing. And when I say content marketing, I mean anything from videos, text, events, all of that good stuff. Reach out to us. I'm also just happy to talk if you're kind of between a rock and a hard place and it's a long slog. So anyways, thanks for this. I hope this was helpful to you in some way. Like, share, comment, and we'll be back next time with a new interview. Thanks.